Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of Season 9 of the Dark Money Files, in which we shine a light into a murky world. I am Ray Blake. With me is my co-host, friend and business partner, Graham Barrow. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Ray.
Now, Graham, we spent a while last time asking some fairly basic questions about why we test people's knowledge, understanding and application after anti-money laundering training, and shared that we've had an interest in this for a number of years.
A number of years. In fact, it is the thing we eventually went into business together 20 odd years ago to develop.
It is. So, given that, we were never going to cram everything into a single podcast episode, were we? So Let's pick up where we left things last time. How about that?
Well, yes, let's. And as I recall, we'd looked at Bloom's taxonomy and the difference between testing knowledge and then testing understanding and application. And we'd looked at the ways that firms can get it wrong in giving feedback after a test attempt.
Yes, we did. And we promised we'd look this time at some measures that can give you assurance that your assessments, and indeed your training for that matter, are effective.
And that is so important, isn't it, Ray? But so often not done.
Very true.
Well then, let's start by establishing why we want to test people in AML.
Well, I think it's so that we can get reasonable assurance that they'll do the right thing when it comes down to it, that our training has equipped them to act the way we want them to.
Good, yes, that's one reason, but can you think of any others?
Well, I suppose it's also useful to be able to identify any particular areas where the individual might need a bit more training or support, either to come up to the required standard or to fill any minor gaps in where overall we think they're actually good enough.
Very good. And then to extend that point, we can look beyond just individual development needs or blind spots to those across the whole firm when we aggregate all of the tests that are taken.
You mean to influence ongoing training efforts?
Well, quite so, even to check that the training is up to scratch, I suppose. So, yes, it's whether the test is effective or not, and whether the training is effective or not, is so crucial to so many different outcomes, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah.
Well, so Ray, what would happen to those outcomes if it turned out the test was ineffective?
Well, you wouldn't be able to use it to get assurance that your staff knew what they were doing around AML. You'd struggle to determine whether you were equipped to meet your regulatory obligations around detecting and preventing financial crime.
And you'd also not have much of a clue about what particular blind spots there may be in your people's capability, either on an individual or probably more worryingly, on a collective basis.
Yeah, that wouldn't be ideal at all.
Okay, so would you say that it's important to understand how effective your testing is, not just whether people are passing?
Yes, you want to know how well your test measures people's actual capability. You want to be sure that people who deserve to pass tend to pass, and if people don't deserve to pass, then typically they don't.
Nicely put, Ray.
Eventually. No idea how many run-ups that took.
No, you're not going to find out either.
No.
So how would you go about doing that? You get someone clever to look at the questions?
Well, I mean, you could, but there are more scientific and reliable ways you could do it.
Okay, well, let's look at those then. Will there be sums involved?
Only quite simple ones, Graham.
Oh, good. Where shall we start?
Well, as ever, you have to start with data, as much of it as you can collect. You should administer your test and arrange everyone who's taken it into a line, stretching from the lowest scoring candidate right up to the highest scoring candidate.
Okay. Now, I'm imagining lots of people standing in front of a brick wall from some disappointed folk at the left-hand end. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why, but it's always the left-hand end.
Yeah.
To a few who are looking very pleased with themselves all the way over to the right.
That's excellent, Graham. Now, do you remember at school when they used to put people into streams or sets for some subjects?
Well, I do, Ray, but it's not a time or a process I have particularly fond memories of.
Well, I think that's probably true for most of us, Graham. But thinking of our lineup and focusing on that for now, I want you to imagine we're going to sort this lot into 3 sets. Those smug lot over at the right-hand end, the high scorers, we're going to call them the top set. And those at the other end of the line, we're going to call the bottom set.
Okay, and the lot in the middle?
Well, they're the middle set, and we're not going to be overly interested in them for this analysis.
And that's just typical, Ray.
It was a long time ago, Graham. Get over it.
Fair enough.
So remember, we've got a top set, all the people who scored very well in the test overall, and a bottom set who were the least successful in the test.
Yeah, that's very clear and actually brings back all sorts of memories. But yeah, no, it's very clear, right? Yeah.
Okay,
I'm getting over
now,
it. I'm getting over it.
Yeah, I can tell. So, Graham, let's bring it down to an individual question level. Let's say question 1 in the test turned out to be quite an easy one. Let's say 90 out of the 100 people who answered it got the answer right, and 10 people therefore chose the wrong option.
Okay.
We would say that question had a facility of 0.9.
Okay, yeah, got that.
Okay, now let's think about the other 0.1. In this case, that's the 10 people who got the question wrong.
All right, I am thinking about them.
Excellent. Now, would you expect more of those people to be in the top set for the test or the bottom set?
Well, the bottom set, of course, Ray. I mean, the bottom set has all the less able candidates in it. So if this is quite an easy question...
And a facility of 0.9 suggests that it is...
Well, then in that case, I'd expect only the people in the bottom set, or maybe a few stragglers in the middle set, to be getting it wrong. And for everyone in the top set, because they're in the top set, to get it right.
And we would call that a question with a positive discrimination, which means you're more likely to get the question right if you're skilled than if you're not.
And that's how it should be.
But what would you say if all the people who got that question wrong were in the top set, Graham?
I would say, Ray, that does not make any sense to me.
Well, perhaps not at first glance, but I can assure you it can happen, and sometimes it does. What do you think might be going on?
Well, maybe you're marking the wrong option as correct.
Well, it's possible, but then so are 90% of all your people, so maybe it's unlikely in this case.
Okay, then. Well, maybe there's something about one of the options that's steering really knowledgeable people away from the answer that you are marking as right.
Well, like what?
Well, perhaps there's something about the specific aspect you're testing that really experienced people know isn't always as simple as most people think. And one of the options suggests that there is more to the question.
Yep, I can see how that might happen. But what you've ended up with here is a negatively discriminating question, one that your bottom set is more likely to get right than your top set is. Now, my question would be, is this contributing to the effectiveness and reliability of your test?
Well, no, it's not, Ray. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If you've got more than one of these in your test, then very capable people will fail it, and less capable people might pass when they really don't deserve to.
Now, these two measures, facility and discrimination, form the basis of an analysis that's frankly vital for any multiple choice test that you want to rely on for any reason at all, let alone in the light of the HR and regulatory outcomes that an AML test might mean.
And while there are other analyses you can do, it's this one, based on these two measures, that should form the foundation of your assurance work, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Right, so let's dig into this a bit more, Ray, and see how you can use these two measures to find specific problems in your test.
OK, now this is something we've done for firms in the past, and it's almost magical, isn't it?
Well, yes, we get firms to give us their test data, but not give us the actual questions and the options.
So we just know that, for example, 2,000 people took the test in the last 6 months, and which option was chosen by which of those people for each question.
We don't know who the people are, nor what the questions are or were, nor any of the answers, but we do know which of the answers is supposed to be the key, the right answer.
And from this data, we can tell people an awful lot about the effectiveness of their tests and of particular questions within it, can't we?
Yes, we can. Like the time we were able to tell a training manager they'd got the answer wrong to one of their questions. They were marking the right answer as wrong.
Yeah, now the manager told us we were wrong because that wasn't possible.
Yeah, and we told him to look at the specific question in the bank without telling us what it was. We told him that while option B looked like a good answer, it was in fact wrong, even though his system was giving a mark for it. We said it was superficially credible by people who knew a little, but not enough. We said the correct answer was D, but since so few people actually got it right, it was probably a bit of a trick question, written by a question writer who was more concerned with looking clever than with letting people show their understanding.
Yep, and we also said that A and C weren't fooling anyone, not even the least knowledgeable candidates, and that he should either replace those options with more attractive and plausible ones, or turn the question into a true or false.
And as he looked up the question, he was shaking his head, but when he found it and read it, he gradually became very still and maybe a little green at the gills.
We never found out what the question was, but we're really confident it's no longer used in the test in that format.
Yes, and that was deeply satisfying, but not very enlightening for our audience today.
No.
So I thought we might share some actual questions and talk about why they are flawed.
That's a good plan.
Okay, so I will start. Here is a question that's very similar to one we see quite a lot in anti-money laundering tests. Question: which one of the following best describes the process of integration?
I may have views, Graham, about how useful this question is at all, but let's hear the choices, shall we?
Okie doke. Option A is initially getting criminal cash into the financial system.
Okay, and what's B?
Moving illicit funds around the system to disguise their nature or origin.
Gotcha. What about C?
C is investing criminal proceeds that are passed through and around the financial system into seemingly legitimate investments and assets that the criminal can freely access or use in legitimate or further criminal endeavours.
Okay, and for completeness, Graham, what's D?
D is a 1989 album by The Cure.
Oh, I see. Well, D is nonsense. That was disintegration, not integration.
Well, I fear you may have missed the bigger point there, Ray. It's a joke option. It's there for the question writer's amusement only and makes the test weaker, both by trivialising what might be a career-limiting event and by rendering this a 3 option rather than a 4 option question.
Well, yeah, obviously that too.
But you don't need to know anything about AML to get the answer right. Anyway, it's C, and people who know nothing at all about AML will be drawn to that option in their droves.
And that's because?
Because of its length, Ray. As the right answer, option C is 32 words long, whereas A and B are only 20 in total when they are combined.
So what's the principle here?
Well, it's that the longest option, or at least the one that is substantially longer than others, is attractive because it's probably more detailed, more precise, and therefore immediately more credible.
Yeah, whereas the other, shorter ones don't have to be precise or detailed because, well, they're wrong. Why lavish the same level of care on writing them?
Exactly, Ray. And if this question has done the rounds of compliance and legal review and sign-off, some person, or more likely more than one person, may have felt the need to add additional detail or precision, meaning well, but neglecting to do the same with the wrong answers.
Yes, that's pretty clear. And in our experience, it happens quite a lot. So if you're taking a test and you're not sure of the answer to a question, you could do worse than picking the longest answer.
You could, or failing that, the most precise one.
Any more exam hacks like that, Graham?
Well, lots of them, Ray, but with great power, I think, comes great responsibility. So let's just cover two more, shall we?
Well, I think that's admirably ethical, Graham.
There, thank you. Right then, the first one we'll look at is another one we see a lot. Are you ready?
Ready and eager.
Oh, Ray, you're too kind. So here we go. By law, the maximum percentage of a company you can generally own without being considered a UBO is...
And the options?
A, 25%.
Okay.
B, if you'd like to know, a 1/3 share of the company. C, well, it depends on your risk level.
Okay.
D, there is no maximum.
Graham, I don't think this one is quite so easy, is it?
No.
Well, I mean, I think it's A, 25%. But I can understand why people might go for B. A quarter is fairly arbitrary and a third is no more so.
Okay.
And lots of firms do bring it down from 25% where risk is higher. So you'd have to know that the law only sets a single limit to avoid that.
Well, that's all very sensible, Ray, but you'll find that virtually no one gets this wrong, even though, as you say, there are what seem like credible answers here.
Why is that, Graham?
Well, you see, the question isn't really a question, is it? It doesn't end in a question mark. It's an unfinished sentence that you're asked to finish with the right answer.
Ah.
So if you go for the right one, the whole thing ends up as, by law, the maximum percentage of a company you can generally own without being considered a UBO is 25%. Now, if you went for B instead, how would it come out?
By law, the maximum percentage of a company you can generally own without being considered a UBO is a 1/3 share of the company.
Yeah, but a 1/3 share isn't a percentage, is it? If that were the answer, you'd never have asked the question or written the question, because frankly, what you do is you write a sentence and chop the end off.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it that way. So what about C?
Okay. By law, the maximum percentage of a company you can generally own without being considered a UBO is it depends on your risk level.
Well, that's just a bit clunky, isn't it? And that's not how you would have asked the question if it had had that answer. And I think you'll find, Ray, that D is the same.
Okay, let's have a go. By law, the maximum percentage of a company you can generally own without being considered a UBO is there is no maximum. Well, that's just obviously nonsense.
Yep. So you're getting the answer correct by exploiting grammatical clues and not by knowing the subject matter.
Does that really happen in the real world?
You mean, do questions get asked that way and give the game away? I'm sorry to say that, yeah, absolutely, yes, they do.
Well, no, I mean, are people taking the test savvy enough to see it and exploit it?
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry. Yes, I think they are. It won't always happen consciously. For many people, there will be a subconscious attraction to the right answer for the wrong reason. This has been thoroughly tested scientifically, and it happens a lot. It's a real thing.
Well, there we are. One more hack then, Graham?
Okay, this one works where you have two parts to each answer.
Okay, shoot.
Right. What is the range of scores in our client risk assessment that will yield a medium risk rating?
Now, which firm is this for, Graham?
Doesn't matter, Ray.
But how will I know their risk rating scores?
You won't, but I reckon you've still got a good chance of getting this right.
Okay, let's see. What are the choices?
I shall give you them all, Ray.
Okay.
Is it between 20 and 50 points, between 25 and 60 points, between 25 and 65 points, or between 30 and 60 points?
Okay, give me those again slowly, Graham.
Right. Is it between 20 and 50 points?
Okay.
Between 25 and 60 points?
Okay.
Between 25 and 65 points? Or between 30 and 60 points?
Okay, I think I've got it. I'm going to say the second one, 25 and 60.
And you are right.
Yeah, do you know, that felt like the right answer for some reason.
And the reason is what we call convergence.
Come again?
Well, let's break it down, Ray. Each answer had two halves, a lower number and a higher one. What were the lower numbers in the four options?
Well, there was 20, 25, 25 and 30.
Yep. And the higher numbers?
Those were 50, 60, 65 and 60 again.
So as a lower number, only 25 appeared more than once.
Yes. And for the higher numbers, it was 60 that appeared most often.
So you found yourself drawn to the one option where those two converged. You chose B, which was 25 and 60, combining the most frequently appearing first half and the most frequently appearing second half.
Well, I mean, it's obvious when you put it like that, Graham.
Yeah, but again, this can work on a conscious or a subconscious level.
And once you know, it's easy to spot. But if you don't know about it, you'd always end up writing your question like that because you want one right answer and three others that are nearly right.
Exactly.
Well, Graham, I have to say this has been really enlightening and quite a lot of fun.
Well, that's what we aim for, Ray. Worth saying, though, that across these two episodes, we have barely scratched the surface of how to get your multiple choice testing right.
Indeed. If it's something you want to learn more about, or if you want us to help you with checking or improving the effectiveness of your own tests, we're absolutely ready to help.
Oh, always, Ray.
So, what's next, Graham?
Well, I think it's time for a short break since we've now reached the end of our 9th season.
Oof.
I know. And after that, I thought we'd be really imaginative and we will launch season 10.
Slaves to convention that we are. I'm looking forward to it.